Hello everyone, if you have your own paranormal experiences you'd like to share, please send them to our channel. Remember, we're not looking for fiction, but real accounts of unexplained events. Stay safe out there, and remember, not all ghosts are scary. Some just need help finding their way home. The fire started small. On April 10, 1834, smoke began curling from the kitchen of the elegant mansion at 1140 Royal Street in New Orleans' French Quarter. Neighbors rushed to help, forming bucket brigades as flames licked at the shuttered windows of what everyone knew as the Lalaurie House, home to Dr. Louis Lalaurie and his beautiful wife, Marie Delphine. But when the volunteer firefighters tried to reach the upper floors, they found their path blocked. Madame Lalaurie stood at the foot of the stairs, her silk dress pristine despite the chaos, refusing to hand over the keys to the slave quarters above. "There is nothing up there that concerns you," she said, her voice cold as winter wind off the Mississippi. The fire spread. Someone they never found out who finally produced a key. The first man up those stairs was a local judge named Jacques Canange. What he found would haunt him until his dying day. The third floor had been converted into a torture chamber. 7 slaves were chained to the walls in positions that defied human anatomy. Their limbs had been broken and reset at impossible angles. One woman had been forced into a tiny cage, her spine curved unnaturally. A man hung from iron collars, his fingernails removed, surgical experiments performed on his skull. Another had been flayed alive, the wounds carefully tended to keep him conscious. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. In the corner, barely alive, was an elderly woman who had been suspended by her neck with just enough slack in the rope to stand on her toes. When she saw the rescuers, she whispered with her ruined voice, "She said she would make us beautiful. Like her." The crowd outside grew violent when word spread. They stormed the house, destroying everything they could reach. But Madame Lalaurie had already fled, escaping in her carriage with her daughters to Paris, where she lived comfortably for the rest of her days. She never faced justice for her crimes. The house stood empty for years. No one would buy it. No one would even walk past after dark. Then came the reports. In 1874, the first tenant moved in, a young lawyer named David Morrison, who got the property cheap due to its reputation. He lasted 3 weeks. "The screaming starts at midnight," he told the landlord when he handed back the keys. "Always from the 3rd floor. Always the same voices. When I went to investigate, the sounds stopped, but I could feel them watching me. In the morning, I found scratches on the walls that weren't there before." An Italian family took over the lease next. They converted it into apartments, thinking multiple tenants would dilute whatever haunted the place. They were wrong. Mrs. Corolla, who lived on the 2nd floor, kept a detailed diary of the disturbances. March 15, 1876, chains rattling above my bedroom from 2 a.m. until dawn. March 18, 1876, found bloody handprints on my kitchen wall. They led to the staircase. March 22, 1876, my daughter says a woman in white visits her room. The woman has no hands. March 30, 1876, we are leaving. Last night I saw her, Madame Lalaurie herself, standing in the courtyard, smiling up at the 3rd floor windows. When I blinked, she was gone, but I could smell her perfume for hours. The Carollas fled to Chicago. The house stood empty again. In 1882, it became a school for girls. The Creole school for young ladies seemed like a perfect solution. Surely the innocence of children would cleanse the evil from those walls. The first sign of trouble came during the opening ceremony. As the school's founder, Miss Pauline Blank, gave her welcoming speech in the courtyard, every flower in the garden died simultaneously. The petals turned black and fell like rain. Within a month, 3 girls had been found sleepwalking on the 3rd floor, always returning to the same room, the one that had housed Madame Lalaurie's torture chamber. They had no memory of how they got there, but each girl bore identical scratches on her arms. Then came the night that closed the school forever. 12-year-old Celeste Treem was found hanging from the same iron fixture that had once held one of Madame Lalaurie's victims. The coroner ruled it suicide, but Miss Blank knew better. She had seen Celeste laughing and playing just hours before. More disturbing, the child's final words, scrawled in her own blood on the wall, were, "She showed me how to be beautiful." The school closed the next day. Miss Blank burned her records and never spoke of what happened there again. As the 19th century waned, the Lalaurie House gained a reputation that extended far beyond New Orleans. Ghost hunters came from across America, but few lasted more than one night. Those who did emerge told remarkably similar stories. The sound of Madame Lalaurie's heels on the wooden floors. The smell of her distinctive French perfume mixed with something metallic. Voices begging for death in the walls. And always, always, her laughter echoing from the third floor. In 1909, a paranormal investigator named Dr. Edmund Hartwell arrived with the latest in scientific equipment: cameras, recording devices, thermometers. He was determined to document the supernatural activity with empirical evidence. His final journal entry, found beside his body 3 days later, read: "She is still here. Still experimenting. The slaves never left, they cannot leave. She keeps them here, keeps hurting them, for eternity. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that she's not insane. She never was. She's learning. Each new victim teaches her something new about pain, about the human soul. She's building something with all this suffering, crafting some terrible masterpiece. I can hear her in the walls now, calling my name. She says she wants to show me something beautiful. The temperature has dropped 40 degrees in the past hour, but I'm sweating. My hands are shaking so badly I can barely write. She's coming up the stairs. God help me, she's still beautiful." Dr. Hartwell's body bore no signs of violence, but his hair had turned completely white. His cameras had captured nothing but shadows, but his recording equipment picked up something that made grown men weep when they heard it: the voice of Madame Lalaurie, sweet as honey, whispering, "Would you like to see my collection?" The house was boarded up after that. The city council quietly decided that some places were better left alone. But boarding up a house doesn't stop the dead from reaching out. During the 1920s, nearby residents began reporting strange phenomena. Children playing in the street would suddenly stop mid-sentence, their eyes fixed on the third-floor windows of the empty house. They claimed to see an elegant woman in white watching them, sometimes waving. In 1932, a jazz musician named Claude Thibodeau was walking home late one night when he heard piano music coming from inside the boarded house. The melody was hauntingly beautiful but impossibly sad. Against his better judgment, he climbed through a broken board to investigate. The music stopped the moment he entered. Claude found himself in the parlor where Madame Lalaurie had once entertained New Orleans society. Moonlight streamed through the gaps in the boards, illuminating a scene that shouldn't have existed. The room was perfectly preserved, as if frozen in 1834. Crystal glasses still sat on the mahogany table, containing what looked like fresh wine. That's when he heard the voice, cultured, French-accented, amused. "Monsieur Thibodeau? I've been expecting you." She stepped from the shadows like she was made of moonlight herself. Madame Lalaurie looked exactly as she had in life: ageless, elegant, radiantly beautiful. Only her eyes gave away the truth. They were black as the bottom of a well, and ancient with terrible knowledge. "Your music calls to me," she said, gliding closer. "Such passion, such pain. I collect pain, monsieur. I preserve it, study it, perfect it. Would you like to contribute to my collection?" Claude tried to run, but the front door had vanished. Where it should have been was solid wall. "Don't be afraid," she whispered, now close enough that he could smell her perfume: jasmine and copper. "I've learned so much since we last had visitors. My techniques have become refined." The last thing Claude remembered was her smile, beautiful and terrible as a falling star. He was found 3 days later in Jackson Square, alive but changed. His hair had gone white like Dr. Hartwell's, and he never played music again. When asked what happened, he would only whisper, "She's still practicing." The city finally tore down the boards in 1969, converting the building into apartments once more. But the residents never stayed long. The pattern continued: unexplained sounds, objects moving on their own, and always the reports of a beautiful woman in white who appeared in mirrors and shadows. In 2007, actor Nicolas Cage bought the property, drawn by its dark history. He planned to restore it to its original grandeur. But after several months of renovations, even he couldn't continue. Workers refused to return after finding their tools rearranged in disturbing patterns: hammers and saws positioned to form symbols that hurt to look at directly. The house was foreclosed in 2009 and sold again. Today, tour guides still bring visitors past 1140 Royal Street, sharing sanitized versions of its history. They don't mention that neighbors still report the sound of screaming on quiet nights. They don't talk about the impossibly high utility bills from empty apartments, or the flowers that still won't grow in the courtyard. And they certainly don't mention what the current owner found last month during routine maintenance: a hidden room behind the third floor wall, perfectly preserved, containing things that the fire of 1834 never touched. Things that suggest Madame Lalaurie's experiments were far more successful than anyone ever imagined. Because the truth about 1140 Royal Street isn't that it's haunted. The truth is much worse. It's still occupied. And after nearly 2 centuries of practice, Madame Marie Delphine Lalaurie has become very, very good at her work. The screaming stopped years ago. That's when you know she finally perfected her technique. Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like and subscribe button, and then share it with your friends. Your support helps us grow and create even more awesome content. We appreciate you being part of the journey.